All right, welcome back. Now, Home Affairs Minister Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi has briefed the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs about immigration issues, including the opening of refugee offices, statelessness, as well as the backlog project. Earlier this week, Motsoaledi issued smart ID card and marriage certificate to a woman, Gogo Malisela Mashilo, who is 103 years old on her birthday. This was done via a mobile service in far-flung rural area of Sekhukhune in Limpopo. For more on this, we're joined by Minister Motsoaledi. Thank you very much, Minister, for your time here on all angles. Let's start with 103-year-old Gogo Masilo. Why, if indeed this was her very first ID, unless, she probably had a green ID book before and you were just giving her a card. Just clarify that for us, because then that begs the question on why she would be receiving an ID at 103 years old.
Good afternoon, Masego. Good afternoon to the listeners and viewers out there. Indeed, you are right. She had a green barcoded ID. As you know, the department started this campaign to replace the green barcoded ID with a smart card, because the green barcoded ID is not safe at all. It can easily be defrauded. So we have started the program whereby villages that are far from Home Affairs offices, we send mobiles there and encourage the villagers to come and get their IDs or get their smart cards. So it so happened that we went to an area around Mabololo in a village called Matlerekeng some 3 weeks back, and this Gogo appeared there to change his barcoded, a smart card into, her green barcoded ID rather, into a smart card. She came on her own, and we felt that we need to help her because of her age and go to her home. It so happened that on the same day, another Gogo who was 99 years old also appeared on the scene to do the same thing. And it so happened that they don't stay far from each other. So Gogo Mashilo was turning 103 on the 18th, and we said, let's celebrate her birthday by giving her this smart card which she came to apply for.
All right, and this today, you speaking to the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs, I can imagine that top of the agenda for that particular meeting was the immigration issues that we face in South Africa at the moment.
Well, we were reporting, it was myself and the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugee, we were reporting on a joint project which we have started together in 2021, whereby we are clearing the backlog on appeals, asylum appeals. You'll know, Masego, that there's been a large number of people who rushed to South Africa after the world economy collapsed, especially the collapse of the economy in Zimbabwe in 2008. By 2009, there were lots and lots of people who came here, and many of them did not qualify for asylum. They were rejected by the refugee status determination officers, and they appealed. So the appeal process built a backlog, and we're working with United Nations to clear that backlog. We were giving a progress report on that. The second one is on the issue of statelessness, because the definition of statelessness is very clear, but people confuse it or they want to use it for their own ends. And so we're also going to clarify that. The others is a propaganda that is being run around that we have closed refugee reception centers. Masego, refugee reception centers, like many other services, were closed during COVID. When the disaster management regulations were lifted, we opened them, and we're going to report to the Portfolio Committee about the progress in that regard.
And Dr. Motsoaledi, there's a statement that just dropped actually from your office in terms of yet another syndicate that was arrested last week Friday, a syndicate that sells South African IDs. Tell us more about that arrest.
Actually, it's not a new syndicate per se. If you remember, when we arrested the Pakistani kingpin
in Kempton Park,
yes, it was in Krugersdorp.
Yes,
in our Krugersdorp office. Yes, the one we arrested in Kempton Park at OR Tambo was from Bangladesh. See, they were working together as groups, together with some Home Affairs officials. Since that time, people have been on the run, but we've been looking for them, and we eventually caught up with them, and they've been arrested last week Friday. and they appeared in court on yesterday. So these are the people we've been looking for, who were on the run and who believe they can run away from the law forever. But we eventually caught up with them.
Where exactly was this particular part of the syndicate? Because you're saying it's one syndicate, so this leg, if I can call it that, where exactly were they arrested? And during the time that you made the arrest in Krugersdorp, you also mentioned how much money they were charging individuals for buying IDs, etc. Was it the same amount of money this time as well?
Yes, as I'm saying, it's the same syndicate. We are arresting them for the very same thing that we arrested people in April. If you remember, we announced that this syndicate is running in 6 provinces, not just a few. It was in 6 provinces, including Gauteng and Mpumalanga. This particular group that they've been arrested were running the racket in Mpumalanga, and that's where they were arrested.
And what are you hoping for, Minister, in terms of these arrests? Obviously, this is a breakthrough, especially looking at, our immigration issues in South Africa and the fact that a lot of people have been complaining about, people being able to just get access to IDs that normally don't belong to them. What are you hoping for? Because now after you arrest them, they're no longer in your hands. It's, up to the courts and the evidence that is presented to court in terms of their punishment, for lack of a better word. So what are you hoping the courts do to assist? Because doing something like this is a huge crime against an entire country.
Indeed, it's a huge crime, and we are doing a lot of things, Masego. Firstly, those who are working for Home Affairs, I'm sure you are aware, we have already fired some of them. We take them through a DC process, and we remove them from employment. But we can't stop there. They've got to be reported to the police because, as we are saying, they've committed the crime against the country. So we are hoping the courts will come to the party, and we believe they've already done so by denying bail to some of them, especially those who come from other countries. But the other thing we are doing in this process, we also are able to identify the documents they've issued and render them useless. In other words, once a document has been issued this manner, and we identify who issued it and which document is that, we render it useless so that the person, even if they've paid money, are carrying a useless document. So it's quite a number of things we are doing. But the fourth thing is to see their modus operandi and try to change our systems. You may be aware that in August, I announced a new system of passport control, whereby in the past, you will apply for a passport, for instance, in Cape Town, and come and collect it here in Johannesburg, in an office in Johannesburg, and rush to OR Tambo Airport when you go overseas. We've now taken that away. You apply for it, you receive your passport in the office where you have applied for it. And secondly, that passport, when it arrives in that office, is not activated, it's not functional. You have to activate it using your fingerprint so that it goes to the right person. If you receive a passport in any other manner without activating through a fingerprint, that passport is useless for you, it won't work. So we actually implemented that, instituted that method after learning the modus operandi of the Pakistani international, Pakistani national rather, in Krugersdorp. So it does help us in many ways.
I'm looking at this particular statement, and I'm reading about Nhlanhla Mathebula for another time, Minister. And as you mentioned, he's one of those corrupt Home Affairs officials that you've basically gotten rid of to get rid of the rot within Home Affairs. But the selling of identities for as little as 500 Rand, quite an indictment and an embarrassment for all South Africans. If somebody can just basically sell the country or sell someone's identity in South Africa for a lousy 500 Rand.
Well, it is a big embarrassment, but you may understand why as little as 500 Rand is accepted. The kingpins of this scheme, Masego, they go for kids who are on drugs, on nyaupe, methylamphetamine, and all the other drugs. Now, if you understand the behavior of people on drugs, remember they are controlled by anything. I'm sure you are mentioning 500 Rand, even 100 can do. All they want is a fix. And all the people who are recruited are mostly youngsters on drugs. I'm sure you have heard here one of your co-workers, I think is Jones. What's his name, by the way?
Puleli Jones.
Yes. You remember he was in Soshanguve, where youngsters were confessing, who are on Yaupe, who are selling their photos for a photo swap, just for a fix. I'm sure you are aware, even a woman who is decent, if they can be on drugs, you can do anything with them if you promise them a fix. So it is that as bad as that. It's a big social problem. It's an embarrassment, but also very painful, because people who are affected by drugs are being used in this scam.
Maybe we should try to move quickly, Minister, I don't know what you think, away from actual ID books or ID cards to biometrics?
No, you can't. Yeah. Basically, remember, the process to move out to a smart card started in 2013. But we still have quite a number of people, because it's a modernized system. But what we are doing to try and rectify this problem, you remember, we are moving away from harness. All of you who have got IDs, passport, or ever got married, or birth certificates or death certificates, you are on the National Population Register. And your biometrics on the National Population Register are carried by a system called harness, Home Affairs National Identification System. We are now moving to a new advanced system called ABIS, Automated Biometric Information System. Whereas harness has got only two biometrics, a fingerprint and your photo. ABIS adds iris recognition technique, it adds facial recognition, it also adds palm print. So you are going to have 5 biometrics, which will be very difficult to defraud. Like, nobody can defraud the iris in your eyes. It belongs to you and you only, and no other person can take or own. Nobody can own your face. Your face belongs to you. So if you have got a system that recognizes faces, you cannot swap faces. And that's what we are busy with. And the system is about to be completed.
And just quickly and lastly, Minister, can you give us an update that I assume you gave to the committee earlier today in terms of the backlog with the refugee officers?
Yes, no, the refugee reception centers are 5 in number. We have opened them after April. We opened them in May after the state of disaster regulations were lifted. So we're giving them the progress in that regard. We have got a refugee reception center in Musina. We've got the biggest one here in Desmond Tutu in Marawa, starting here in Swani. We've got one in Cape Town. We've got one in Tebeja, and we've got one in Itepini. So we're reporting exactly in terms of statistics, the backlog in each office and what are we doing with it. We're also reporting our program with United Nations, whereby they gave us 143 million rand over the period of 4 years to hire more people. Remember, the appeal process was head by the Refugee Appeals Committee called RASA, which had only 5 members. But now with this money, we are able to hire 36 lawyers, 36 members who are all lawyers to help us clear this backlog. And that's the report we're giving today in front of the Portfolio Committee.
And Minister, in terms of, for instance, I have to ask you this question because there was an ISS report that came out last week, and you're the perfect person to be able to answer this controversial question because your previous portfolio was health. And you might remember a few weeks ago, it might be a month ago actually, when the MEC of Health in Limpopo uttered that, there is quite a huge, a huge indictment on the public health system that is being constrained allegedly by the fact that South Africa is expected to cater for illegal foreign nationals who then don't pay for the services that come into the country. For the ISS seems to disagree with this, saying that we only have about 5.4% or 7.4% of immigrants in our country, and there's no way they can put a burden on the public health system. What do you say? Do you agree with MEC Ramathuba, or are you more of the person who says not necessarily that they are the ones who are causing the burden on the public health system?
I don't have to agree with anybody, Marcelo. I don't have to agree with anybody. Figures and numbers speaks a lot. Just go to our hospitals and check. and I'm inviting your team. You work for a very powerful media house who can go and check, so that not a matter of who says this and who says that. Go to the hospitals and check and ask for statistics and check on your own. That's where you'll get your answer.
Minister, I'm sorry, there's a question I have to ask you just very quickly. In terms of the visas for skilled personnel, there's, the French who are complaining that this backlog is causing them not to be able to come into the country, and they're blaming government for that. What's your response? Are we going to be dealing with this at a faster pace?
Masego, I've just written a letter to the president to announce the companies and the countries where these people make these applications. We have given 604 visas in the past 2 weeks in that regard. And because they were complaining to the president, I have to write to him to give that report. We even named the number of companies that are investing in South Africa: Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Toyota, and many, many others. We have passed those. But having said so, Masego, that complaint, I found it very unfair. After COVID, all the countries have got the backlog on visas, all the countries. A few days after they met the president, I met with the ambassador of USA, who told me that they are about to announce a project to deal with the backlog, and they were saying by December, if they start the project now, by December they will have dealt with half of the backlog. I also happen to know that our Solicitor General is going to the United States. He went to apply for a visa to US. They told him to come to an interview only in 6 weeks' time. 6 weeks. So what am I trying to say? All countries, even the most advanced ones, have got backlogs on visas because of COVID. But for some reason, when it comes to Africa, they complain a lot, as if it is the incompetence of an African country or all that. And I'm giving you this example. You can go and check. With the US, they say they've got a huge backlog, more than 10,000 visas, and they will have only dealt with half of them by December. Now, when it comes to Africa, we'll take away our investment. It's like when we say we want our land back, they say, no, we are taking away investment. It looks like we are always put on a pedestal where other countries are not judged through that way. And I found it very unfair, but be that as it may, we have done the job, and we've presented to the president. I think they were just scaring him off, that we'll go away with our money. We'll go away with our money. And this happens quite often, and it doesn't happen to other European countries. This is grossly unfair and unacceptable.
Minister, thank you very much. I can tell that you're very emotional when it comes to this particular subject. Thank you for your time here on eNCA. Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, the Minister of Home Affairs, there speaking to us. Let's go